Well, welcome to StoryPower TV. I am Loren Norris. I am your host, and we have a businessman extraordinaire in the office with us today, right here in the studio, to talk about what it's like when Jesus impacts your business. A lot of people find it really hard to believe that if you're not in ministry, if you're not a pastor, if you're not a traveling evangelist or a prophet of some sort, that, Jesus and your business, they don't really mix. It's like religion and politics. They don't go together. But I personally disagree with all of those statements. I believe that if God has called you in this world and he's given you a business to run and he's given you a life to live, that he should have a lot to do with all of those aspects. And in the last 3 hours that I spent with Ron over dinner last week, I believe he believes the same thing. And so I just want to spend some time with Ron today and allow you to sit in on this conversation and hear what it's like to run a business when Jesus is the king of your life and the Lord of your life, and you're making decisions based on that. So Ron, thank you for coming today. I appreciate you stopping by the studio.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about your walk of faith. I know we talked about this a little bit, but for the sake of the audience, tell me a little bit about when and where and how you found Jesus.
Yeah, so, I was, it goes back when my mother and I were just us two. And, my mother was a waitress. And so I remember a time when we would gather at the table and dump out all of the change from her tips and from my dumpster diving for Coke bottles and shining shoes so that we could roll up the pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters and so that we could pay the bills. And, my mother was, she had to leave school in the 10th grade so that she could have me. And it was us. And my father left when I was about 4 or 5. And that was a good thing because, he wasn't the kindest person to us.
Wow.
And so it was a relief when he was gone. And that went for a few years until I was 9. And my mother married my stepfather and really changed our lives. We moved from California to Texas, and my grandmother came along with us. And my grandmother was a very spiritual, loving, kind person that really was a major influence on my life.
Mine too.
And kept me in church. And so when I was about 12 was when I accepted Jesus, and then I was soon baptized after that. And but it had a major impact on my life, and I wish that I could say that I followed on that path for the rest of my life. However, things took some turns. And in fact, I was sharing with somebody today, and we were talking about what day it was, and I thought, wow, I said, actually, I've been married for 46 years today.
Congratulations.
Well, it just wasn't with my first wife.
Oh.
But I have been married 46 years, just not with my first wife. But that's to tell you how my life kind of took a little bit of a turn. I went from, I actually, in 12 years, I was the first to graduate of any of my parents and of my grandparents.
You mean to graduate from high school or from college?
From high school.
From high school. Okay.
From high school.
Wow.
So I was the very first. And I went to 10 different schools from kindergarten to graduating from high school. That was probably a good thing. Found out later that I had dyslexia.
Oh, wow.
And so as it turned out, they just kept promoting me. So
move along.
I just kind of I just kind of maneuvered, right? And I, by the grace of God, truly by the grace of God, I was able to get into the military because I knew I wasn't going to be able to go to college at that point in my life.
Right.
Because I had just barely scraped figuring out a way to graduate from high school. So going to college seemed to be out of the question.
That's a big stretch.
Yeah. So I went into the military. That wasn't the easiest thing for me because of having dyslexia. It was undiagnosed at that point in my life. I thought of myself as just not quite as smart as the other people. And because because I couldn't read. And I mean, I could write, I could write my name, but I barely knew my ABCs.
Oh, wow.
I graduated high school.
That says a lot about our education system, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, that's why the majority of my kids go to a private Christian school. But not to say anything about my grandchildren that go to public school too, but they've got parents that are educators. So I got out of the military, and that's when I got into business. And I went to Bible college, could not manage, so there was, I was in the ministry, but I couldn't graduate from Bible college to get my degree. And so I quit. I went into business. I owned my first businesses by the time I was 24 years old. I sold my first two businesses by the time I was 26. I went into real estate. I'd made my first $1 million by the time I was 27.
Wow.
And I was completely broke by the age of 30.
Okay, we have to jump to a break, but I want to hear more about how you made that transition. I mean, you can't make it, you barely made it in the military, barely made it out of high school, couldn't get into college, couldn't make it in Bible school, but now all of a sudden you're a millionaire in business. Sounds like there's something there that maybe you're hiding behind the curtain for right now. When we come back from the break, I want to hear more about that. Okay, you can drop the live. Welcome back to StoryPower TV. We're here with Ron Jones, who just divulged to us that he barely got out of high school, didn't make it in college, didn't make it in Bible school, and yet somehow in a matter of less than 5 years went from starting and owning a business to becoming a millionaire and then kind of starting over again. So Ron, kind of pick up with the story there and tell us how did you make $1 million, number one, and then where'd it go?
Yeah, so this was in the 80s. And I truly, and I don't believe that there are any coincidences. I had two businesses that I was running. They were dental labs. That's what I did in the military. And really the only reason that I think they allowed me to stay in the military, no kidding, was not because of my being able to pass the test, but I had dexterity skills that allowed me to make crowns and bridges and dentures and things like that. So I was good at that.
Right.
So
and you have a natural spatial relation if you're dyslexic. Our son is the same way. You can throw 30 things on the ground and he'll find a way to make them fit in a baby food bottle. And it's like master Tetris in his head, but give him a book and it's going to be a minute.
Yeah, and that was my saving grace. I mean, we don't have time today to go into all the details of the trials and tribulations of my making it through the military, but I think that's the reason why I did make it. But I started my own dental labs when I got out of the military. They were pretty much running themselves after about a year or so.
Oh, wow.
And so I was bored. I needed something to do. I actually went to a seminar on real estate and Actually, ironically enough, one of my friends, and might be one of yours as well, Mark Victor Hansen.
Yeah.
He wrote a book with Robert Allen, and Robert Allen actually was doing seminars on
Wow.
real estate.
It's been a couple of minutes.
Yeah, back in the 80s.
Wow.
And I went, plopped down a credit card, and started listening to the audios that he had and doing. And, the thing about, I think my philosophy's always been that I see my disabilities, and I don't see them as disabilities. I see them as opportunities, and it did give me some opportunities that other people just don't see.
Right.
And one of the things is I really didn't feel like I had anything to lose. Most people that go into business, they have things that they've coveted, or they have things,
Right.
and so they're afraid to lose them.
Right.
Well, see, I started out with, like when we first started this, counting nickels, dimes, and pennies and quarters with my mother so that we could pay our bills, when I was 6.
So at some point you're like,
So-
what have I got to lose?
Yeah, what do I have to lose, right?
Right.
So I was buying property left and right. And I was taking on partners, and I was finding a way. And during that time in the 80s, they had what they called assumed mortgages. They don't have
Right.
those anymore. But so we were assuming mortgages, and we were doing different things. We'd do whatever we had to do.
Creative financing.
But we had we ended up with a couple hundred doors, and those were single family duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and a couple 8plexes in there. But
That's a lot of real estate to manage.
yeah, so we had a full-time, and so that was the other part to it. So we as we started coming up with challenges, we started coming up with solutions. So
That's good balance. Yeah.
we would have a problem.
Never want to have more challenges than you have solutions.
So one of the problems that we ran into was that we had a lot of property that needed a lot of work done to them. And so a guy that I went to church with, his dad was looking at retiring. So I purchased I bought his dad out of the construction company so that we could have a construction company to do the construction
for us,
on the
yeah.
property, right? And then we started having problems with getting mortgages. So we started a mortgage company.
I didn't know you could just like randomly start a mortgage company.
You can,
I thought
actually.
you had to be a bank to do that or something.
No,
Oh,
you
wow.
don't. And, we're mortgage brokers, so we could go out and find funding.
Okay.
And so, I hired somebody that knew how to do that, and let them do it. And so we had a mortgage company, we had a real estate office, and then in 86, the oil prices started going sky high.
Right.
And interest rates were going through the roof. They were already high.
Yeah, 17 or 18% at one point in the late 80s, if I remember
That's right. That is correct. And we had tons of interim notes.
It's like buying a house on a credit card.
It really was. And the thing about it is with credit cards, they cancel your credit cards. With real estate, and you have an interim note, it's like dominoes. And when that interim note comes due and they won't renew the interim note, you lose that piece of property.
And everybody seems to follow suit.
Yeah, so that's what happened. So I went from a net worth of about $4 million to finding and driving around a $275 El Camino that literally, when the parts would fall off, I'd throw them in the back of the El Camino. No kidding. So
We had one of those.
So I tried to figure out, well, what am I going to do? So I thought I would give college another shot. And I went into mental health, mental retardation, but I was with an emphasis on working with people with substance abuse and mental illness, so dual diagnosis.
You were studying MHMR?
When I went back to when I went to college, yeah.
And did you get in?
I did get in, and that's when they figured out that I had dyslexia, because even though because I was a little bit older than most of the people that I was going to school with, but when it came to the knowledge part, it was easy for me to put it together.
And it made sense. You actually understood it.
Yeah.
Because you've had a chance to apply it.
Right. Yeah. So that made sense to me. But when it came time for some of the, not electives, but some of the requirements like chemistry or biology or those things,
that can mess you up.
It was a challenge, and I could only drop those classes so many times until.
And they're required for graduation at some point. Yeah.
And because I'd been in the military and I had a counselor, and they did testing on me and they found out that I had dyslexia. So because the state of Texas is a really good state when it comes to that kind of stuff. And so I was considered to have a disability. And so I was given help where I wouldn't have to take those as requirements. So I did get my degree, actually. So, and I did that for 9.5 years.
So you're saying it took 9.5 years to get a degree?
No.
Oh, okay. You got the degree and then worked in the field.
I got the degree and worked in the field for 9.5 years. Yeah.
Okay.
And during that time, my first wife and I, we were high school sweethearts, and honestly, she's the reason why that I graduated from high school, because she would do a lot of the work for me.
Oh wow!
And we had that kind of relationship. And
I wasn't smart enough to find a girl like that in college or in high school.
Well, I had to be smart enough to find somebody that was smart enough to help me to actually do some of the work for me. And we had that kind of a relationship. She was an enabler, and I was kind of like Peter Pan, and she was kind of like Wendy, you know.
How long were you together?
12 years. We were married for 12 years, have 2 daughters.
Wow.
And, you know, I kind of went crazy for a while. And
when it was over?
When it was over, yeah. And that's where I kind of, I took a different path for a while. And
by that, you mean you pulled away from God?
I did.
Kind of left the fold, so to speak?
I did, yeah. I would consider myself to be that prodigal son, you know, that went away, and even, you know, pulled away from family, pulled away from my kids. And, you know, unfortunately, I think I did some of the things that my real father did, you know, which was end up, you know, not being the responsible parent that I needed to be, you know. And that's where I learned about consequences, and learned that, you know, this has been a whole life is a process, right?
It is.
And you start learning from these different things, and you don't understand sometimes when some of the things that you're doing in life are going to have lifelong effects,
and potentially life-altering effects.
Oh, they are definitely life-altering.
Yeah.
They are life-altering.
Like a kid out of wedlock, or something that caused you to go to prison, or lose your education, or lose a limb.
Yeah.
And I know motorcycle riders who've lost limbs and they just want to give up on life because that life-altering change is more than they can handle.
Right. Yeah, and and so in fact, during part of this, I had a son out of wedlock, and so when I say my life took a turn, it really did take this drastic turn.
Like off-road.
Yeah,
You're like, this is the highway and that's the Baja.
Yeah, and it's not like, so for me, and that's why I'm so grateful that we have such a loving God, that no matter what it is that we do, He loves us enough that He will always be there.
Yeah.
You know, and He was always there for me. And I think back to all these things that I did, all these stupid things that I did in life, and then to still even be here. And so as a result of that, you know, today, my life, when my son, when he was 19 years old, he took his own life.
Ouch.
That was very
Sorry to hear
difficult.
that.
Yeah, it was very difficult. And that was one of those life-altering things where I look back and I go, okay, here are some consequences of my behavior. You know,
Right.
Something that happened. I didn't have a relationship with him. Then this happened. My relationship with my daughters today are probably, I have to love them enough to let them be angry with me.
Kind of go their own way.
Yeah.
Figure out their path.
Yeah.
Did you find in that season after your son took his life that you were blaming yourself? Did you take personal responsibility for that, or was it just a matter of saying things could have been done differently, things could have been done better, and there are things that I personally could have done better or done differently?
Yeah. So,
because I think those are different, especially in trauma.
Yeah. So for me, because through circumstances, I did end up giving up my parental rights because, first of all, I didn't know that I had a son until he was 5.
Wow.
And then I had to file a paternity suit because she wouldn't let me see him once I found out that he was mine. And then I ended up ultimately, because of circumstances, and truly not because you know, I do take responsibility for my actions and the things. I wanted to do my part. I wanted to pay child support. I wanted to be a part of his life. But I found that it was so difficult. It was more difficult for him, and it was confusing for him. So I gave up my parental rights. So when that happened, I actually, didn't know how to feel because I had not had a relationship with him. I felt guilty about feeling guilty.
Interesting.
Because here I was, somebody that wasn't a part of his life, and I did not have an influence on him.
Right.
And so I was feeling these feelings of loss and remorse and guilt. But then I would think, you don't have a right to feel these things because you weren't there. And so yeah.
I guess I can see that because it's like saying, you know, I didn't cook the dinner, I didn't help eat the dinner, but I'm sad that everybody was sick over eating the dinner that the cook prepared wrong.
Because I paid the cook. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
So I bought you dinner and he nearly poisoned you, but you know, that's the extent that I had in it. So you kind of felt. I guess I could see that. That's still hard for me. I'm a very involved parent, but my dad is very much not.
Mm-hmm.
I won the President's Lifetime Achievement Award, and he couldn't come to the banquet. So just one minor microcosm of the expansiveness of things. But I know I haven't been there at every football game or basketball game or baseball game that my kids have tried to be involved in, and so I'm not saying I'm the perfect parent by any stretch of the imagination. I've made plenty of mistakes, but I do understand the absentee. I'm not getting involved. I don't want to be around. I don't care at all. You were an accident. Surprised you even know my name. Versus I'll do everything that I can and know that I'm still going to fall short. And I can see that drastic difference. But that feeling responsible when they're gone, I think, is a natural reaction. And then trying to reconcile that, I'm responsible, I'm in pain, I'm sad, I'm broken, I didn't get a chance to reconcile, I wish it could be better. And yet at the same time, knowing that when you did have the chance, it wasn't really maximized. So
right.
I can see that.
Yeah, and for me, even with that, and I think the best way for me to honor him was to learn from that.
Right.
And to be better.
For your daughters.
Well, as best I could be for my daughters.
Okay.
Because for what they will allow me to do.
Right.
But really for my grandchildren. God has this beautiful, wonderful way of bringing things back around.
It's like he wants to give us another chance as many times as we can stand it. Was that, you ever seen the movie 50 First Dates with Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler?
Yes. Yeah.
It took me a moment, but watching her get up, it's like right near the end of the movie, she gets up and she puts the video back in. And she watches the whole day before. She's like, oh, now I get it. Oh, that's who those people are who keep showing up in my house. And as I was watching that, I remember hearing that. I think it was the voice of old guy that always, McGee, the old Bible guy McGee, reading that passage from the Old Testament, Ecclesiastes, I think it is, God's mercy is new. God's mercy is new every morning. So the old McGee sounded. But when I watched that video and I realized, literally, it's like he just erases the memory of the night before. And you wake up and God's like, all right, let's try this again.
Yeah.
Take 47,018. We're gonna do this one more time.
Well, and so in 2000, this happened in 2009, and so my grandson Henry was 1, and I remember holding him and rocking him and singing "You Are My Sunshine" as I'm trying to rock him to sleep, and tears just started coming down my face, and I just thought,
this is my do-over.
God, thank you.
Yeah.
This was it. And now I have 8 of my 13 grandchildren that I get to have those moments with.
Yeah.
That truly, I brought by one of my grandchildren to see you.
I did, yes.
Yeah.
I got to meet him.
And, so being able to do those things mean a whole lot to me.
Right.
Because of what happened. But it's by the grace of God. God really did just give me this opportunity to have these wonderful, and it just so happened that there are 8 boys. so I get,
so you get 8 chances to do it again.
8
so to
more
speak.
chances
Yeah.
to really show that love and go to. That's why we go to every single event that we can possibly go to. And,
right.
And if we're not there, So I'll tell you a real quick story. So that kind of relates to this. So my wife and I were in Hawaii, and Of course, this was several years ago, and we're in Hawaii, and we had the waiter take a picture of us, and we sent the picture to my stepdaughters and my daughters.
Right.
And so my daughter, that's the mother of Henry, she shows it to Henry, and he goes, "Where's he?" He called himself he when he was little.
How come I'm not in that?
He goes, "Where's he?" because he was always in every single one of our pictures.
Wow.
And that he was appalled that
How dare you have a picture, especially one like that, without me in it.
Exactly. And that's the kind of relationship that God has allowed me to have with them because of that and I truly and not only did it change me in that way, but it changed the way that I started dealing with people, the people in my
Right.
lives, not just my family members, but my friends, the people that worked with me, in my agency when I had an agency, and today, like when we met the other day for dinner, and it's and I was sharing a story with you about being on another podcast and learning about that person, and so I don't do that out of any sense of manipulation whatsoever. It's more
Right.
about that I want to know the person that I'm talking to, and I want them to feel like that they're getting something from this. It's not just about me.
Right.
That was the one thing that I had, that was just one of the many things I needed to learn, but that was a major thing that I needed to learn, is that the world doesn't revolve around me.
That's a hard revelation, especially for teenage girls.
Thanks for the reference. Thank you, teacher.
Yeah, they have.
But no, you're right. You're right.
Yeah,
because I have 2 daughters and 3 stepdaughters, and yes, I do understand.
I don't know how they get to that conclusion. All right, so as we wrap things up here,
Yeah.
take a moment and just speak right to the audience.
Okay.
Because I know there are a lot of guys out there that, whether it was by the choice of baby mama or their own choice, by mistakes she made or mistakes they made together or mistakes just in life, their opportunity to be dad doesn't exist. And I'll never forget when my dad turned to me after a Christmas party that he was at, where all of my kids and grandkids were there and all of their significant others were there. He said, "I don't know how you learned to be a dad like that, because I know I didn't teach you. My dad never knew his dad, and there's no way that that's generational. So you figured out something we couldn't figure out." But I learned to be a dad from my Heavenly Father. And the most important thing that I've learned is, it doesn't matter how many times you screw up, there's another chance. So take a moment, if you will, and just kind of share what your thoughts are on that same thing, maybe for the audience who's saying, "Yeah, I screwed up as a dad," or "I'm afraid I might be."
Yeah. So, as I said, my father wasn't ever there. I did start a relationship with him when I was 40. I was there for him when he passed away. And, I would like to say that even that part of the relationship at the end was pleasant, but it wasn't. And I want to share this, and it's really important, and there's a reason why I'm sharing this, because one of the last things that the conversation that my father and I had was that he told me that if I thought that I was impressing him because I was giving him things, like every time I saw him, if he wanted a new television or if he wanted a new computer or if he wanted this or that or whatever, And he said, if you think that's impressing me, it's not. And I told him that I never wanted to impress him. I just wanted him to be proud of me. And so I share that story with you because you don't have to be, if you're a father out there that you're not being responsible with your kids, you have such an opportunity. But don't do it with the expectation that you're going to get different results. You know, we have to live with our consequences. Do it because that is our responsibility. You know, I do that today. My daughters are grown. I have grandchildren with them that I don't get to spend time with right to this day because of things that I did in the past. But that doesn't stop me from still being responsible enough at this point in my life to send them a voice message or send them a video. Send my grandkids a video every once in a while. Send my daughters a message. I had songs written for each one, both of my daughters separately. I had songs written for them with messages from me that was directly to them. I did that not out of any expectation. I just wanted them to know that I love them. And so if you're not being the responsible dad, take the time to do everything that you can possibly do. Don't be that dad that you want your kids to impress you. They're not here to impress you, but you want them to want to be able to someday be able to say, hey, I might not have let them in, let you in, but you were still there no matter what.
Amen. And I want to say to all of you, you know, I've not been a perfect dad. I work diligently at being a better dad and a better husband every day. I work very diligently at being a better son every day. And part of that is to my mother and father, and part of that is to my king. And so I want to challenge you, if you find yourself in that place and you're saying, I think I could be better as a mom, as a dad, as a brother, as a sister, as a believer, then don't hesitate. Find yourself a coach, find yourself an advisor, find yourself a pastor or a counselor, and just start digging into what could I do to be better. Ask the question. Now, if you're brave enough, corner God and ask him that question. Because I promise you this, he will answer it. You may not like the answer, but if you ask him, God, what could I do to be better as a child of God? What could I do to be a better father, a better husband, a better son? You're going to get an answer. I promise you will. And if you'll take action on what he tells you, it will change your life and very likely change the lives of the people around you. I hope you'll do that today. And I hope you'll find the story of Ron and his journey inspiring to you. Not all of us have a perfect journey. Not all of us start out with all the advantages. Not all of us do everything right. But God's mercy is new every morning, and he will find a way to bless you. I'm Loren Norris with StoryPower TV. Have a blessed day. Very good.